what the bill basically does, it's protecting food safety, and all it does basically is increase the fines, the severity of the fines for trespassing. It creates a zone around where animals are housed, where they're trucked, and where they're processed, and it increases the severity of the fines. That's basically what it does. And it also increases if someone trespassing on one of these zones, if they damage something, there is a possibility that if they go through the court system, that they will have to pay retribution for those damages. But that's actually all the protection this bill provides. Now, the government will say, well, that's the whole point. Where the minister and I totally disagree is the minister, I think, believes, I don't want to put words in the minister's mouth, but we've had this discussion, that this deterrent, and that's what this is, that this deterrent is going to be enough to stop the issue. We disagree. What this deterrent could, and we agree with the deterrent. I have said, and when I was on the agenda with the minister, we don't have a problem with the fines for the trespassing. But the issue is, this might not deter those people. Some people will not be deterred by this. So this bill, for the mother and the children in the house, or for the teenager out milking cows, if those people decide to, if they're not deterred, this bill provides no more protection, actually less than they had before. Why? Because the increased fines could very well make these people martyrs. It actually puts farm families in an odd sort of way at more risk. And the weird thing is, the government says they're so committed and they understand agriculture, and I've said this in question period, Speaker, there is no funding attached at all. And the minister said, well, you don't need funding because, well, if you're dealing with people who have very strong beliefs, you should have some funding attached. Why? Because if those people come and they're not deterred, what happens on the farm? This bill goes at fairly great lengths describing citizens' arrest. At no time does it say dial 911. It says, you have the opportunity to, it describes it in detail, citizens' arrest, and after you make the arrest, then call the police. Well, you know what? Don't you think if you describe how to do that in the bill, that perhaps you should attach some funding to train farmers what actually is reasonable force during a citizen's arrest?
We do that for the police.
And what happens when the first citizen's arrest goes wrong? No, that is a very serious issue. Now, I've heard the minister and the parliamentary assistants ask, say that all these organizations are solidly behind this bill, and I've spoken to many of them, and I've got the 6,000, I think there's 6,000 emails so far, pro, and several thousand anti. But I've asked several of these organizations, well, who is going to be responsible for teaching, for training your members what is reasonable force? And they all, well, we don't want this responsibility. We don't want that liability. Well, someone's going to take the liability, because very well what's going to happen if you have determined people who are willing to risk the deterrent, willing to risk our court system, and you know what? Our court system is pretty backlogged, so they might not even be taking that big a risk. And if they're willing to do this, and an untrained farm family member, an untrained employee, does something that the court after the fact is going to have to rule, the farmer or the employee is going to end up in court having to justify what is reasonable force. And if they decide, if the court decides that perhaps a baseball bat is not reasonable force, it could very well be the farm family member who ends up criminally charged before the trespassers are fined.
Could happen.
Now, again, that is a possibility, and it's a possibility that this government should think about and should make sure that there is funding in place to train. Because one of the frustrating things that I've heard from farm families is because in many cases, police have so much on their plate that it takes, and farms are spread out, it takes a while for the police to come. This bill doesn't add anything to the police. When I asked that to the minister, oh, well, we're going to need less policing because there's more deterrent. Well, you might deter the college kids, but I think you're dreaming if you think that this is going to deter the people who are truly opposed to animal agriculture. I think you're dreaming, Speaker, and that's what we're trying to warn. Now, that's why I'm so disappointed, because I want, in a perfect world, and we went to 10 communities, and we could have this discussion with 10 times, 10 days over with all these people and see how we're going to deal with this. And I hope I'm wrong. This is one where I pray, and I'm not even a religious person, but I pray that we're wrong on this. But, the people across the way say we're wrong. I hope that we are.
Their track record.
But I'm not sure. I am not sure that that's the case. Now,